This is your end of day stock market recap for Monday, February 2nd. No doubt some interesting moves today. The indices were all in the green today, so good start to the month. S&P was up 0.5% today. Qs were up 0.7 of a percentage point, a little bit of a fade there at the end of the day. Small cap, same thing, a little bit of a fade. They were up more than 1% right around 2 o'clock, but a little bit of that usual end of day fade. They were up 1% for the day, and real strength in the micro caps today, up 1.7%. By the way, risk disclaimer in front of you: everything that we're going through in this video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. It gets even more interesting when you look at some of the metals, which continue to go lower over the weekend, but kind of hung in there from where they started the overnight session. Silver was down about 4% today. Same thing was with gold, down 4%. This was kind of interesting, which, if I can remember, I'll go through the chart. But the dollar was up again, so another stronger dollar, which tacked on gains from that reversal that we saw last week in the dollar. And the VIX was back down today, down 6%. Down 16. So, a couple things before we get into sectors. I would say number one, yes, it's a good start to the February, but I would also keep in the back of your mind today that the first of the months are supposed to be kind of strong, because that's usually when new money is being put to work in the market. So that's why I didn't really do too much today. I just figured that it's good to kind of take note of what's moving, where new money is being allocated. And I think that you can kind of come up with a couple conclusions so far for where that new money. Remember, going back to the first trading day of January, I got some really good signals from that. We saw semis. And like the start of trends for the month, we saw semis strong in the beginning of January, software weak. That continued all week long. We saw industrials were strong. That basically continued and had legs. So, and then of course things progressed in January where energy did pretty well. Consumer staples did pretty well for the second half of the month. What transpired today too was transports were up huge today. Biotech had a nice day today. So I will go through some of these charts. Semis continue to tack on gains. They were up 1.1%, but they started the session red. So that's a nice advancement there. Retail was up 1.9%. Walmart had a huge day. So did a lot of other discount retailers. I believe Target had a good day. Ross Stores had a very nice day. The banks were up 1.5%. Industrials 1.3. Leisure, again, my take on travel and leisure is that folks from the Northeast are going to want to get out of Dodge and basically get to some warmer areas. I'm sure that they're planning trips for spring break after a colder than usual winter so far. Financials were up 1.1%, and consumer staples, which I think a lot of people starting to kind of waken up to that group, up 1.2%. Energy shares were down. Again, that was a standout on Friday with XLE up 1%. Well, not so much today. Down 1.9%. Utilities down 1.5%, and uranium continued with its weakness, down over 3%. All right, so let's get to some charts. We did a MarketWebs webinar earlier today on the new value areas. So sorry, let me just get my charts set up here. Oh, there's some weird print that happened in SPY, which is I'm not sure if they're going to take away that print. I'll show you what I mean in just a second here. Could be a fat finger. Could be an error there in SPY, which traded. Woo-wee. Oh my God. What? Like $1? Oh, that's going to ruin somebody's day if that's an actual print down there in SPY. By the way, like, there's rules. This wasn't what I was going to talk about in my end of day video, but I didn't see what happened there in SPY. But there's rules, like the exchange. If it's a certain percentage amount, they will mark it as an error, and they will save somebody's day. If it's not, and I don't remember what the thresholds are, but I know a number of people, when I was an institutional trader, they would make fat finger errors. And if it wasn't through the high enough of the threshold, you basically had to eat that charge, could be a couple $100,000 of an error, and that would happen from time to time. Now, if it was way outside like that SPY print, I'm sure someone will call the exchange and say, "Hey, I have a pretty bad mistake." Anyway, let's get past that. But that's always an interesting story, because if you know anybody, or if you worked on an institutional trading desk, I'm sure you encountered somebody that made a fat finger mistake, which cost them a pretty penny, or cost the bank as well a pretty penny. It happens in trading, believe it or not. SPY. So notice where we closed. So, by the way, this was something that I talked about a lot in the weekend video, is that really, with the way that this market has been trading over the last few months, like, there's money there's definitely things to do in this market, and it's basically been buying the dip. Every time, if you would have bought the dip in the last 3 months, or even longer than that, but really since we've been kind of trading in this range, you've been rewarded. But if you try to kind of look for a breakout in the indices, or also in a lot of stocks too, you've gotten thumped, because there just hasn't been follow through as we get to new highs. It seems like we touch new highs and then we go right back down again, right? And then we kind of look, and then we kind of digest. So why am I going over that? Well, because I think it's really important. Like, if you're going to be a profitable trader in this market, you basically have to know where you can make money and where you're going to lose money. And where you've been losing money is probably trading into some strength. So what I would watch now is 695.27. I don't know if we're going to be able to push through that. Like I said, I think today had a lot to do with first of the month trading, buying. So maybe we kind of come back in and digest a little bit after today. We'll see. So that's the level that I'm watching in SPY. In the Qs, again, they didn't close on the highs, just like they had a lot of problems with the top of the value area last month. And then we finally broke out a little bit, and then we came right back in. To me, this is home on the range. Right. And again, it doesn't mean that you can't find stocks to trade in the queues. It just means, for the overall group, it just doesn't seem to want to do much. And if you're doing some fading when the market's at like 1 o'clock, that trade continues to work, because this market doesn't have enough power to be able to close strong right now. We haven't had one of those, in a while. There's been a couple of them, but look at how many times it looks like it's a green bar, and then it just trails away for the day, right? And again, you could come up with your reasoning for this. Folks like reasons, but my take is that there's not enough cash on the sidelines, right? It just seems like people are kind of maxed out, and I've talked about this, that there's very high levels of leverage. There's also very low cash balances in the investment accounts. Um, in any event, 629.07 is the level to watch there. Also 628.24. Let's go over to the small caps. Again, it seemed like there was some small caps going on again, buying in small caps today. Right, this finally turned and had an outperformance day. You could correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that the small caps have underperformed ever since this candle a couple Thursdays ago. Um, but we did find some support at the new February bottom of the value area. But we're going to have to see if we can get above that 5 and 20-day moving average. All right, so let's talk about some things that basically just were very strong today. And I think what you kind of have to understand here is we're shifting to more of a value type market. Um, and again, value has been strong. We just finished 1 month. For a while, value, especially small cap value and growth, we're doing about the same. Now, this is large cap value versus growth, but you could see value is starting to kind of really take hold here. Right. So this level up here, which is a level in the ratio, is 0.43. That's where I think things could be going. Let's talk about some of the things that did really well today. And I don't really have a reason for this one, but it doesn't matter. You don't need a reasoning for everything. But look at the transports. That's a full green bar today, up 3%. And if you want to look at some of these names that did very well today, I mean, really some standout moves today in the transport space. XPO Logistics, right? Or I believe it was that used to be called XPO Logistics. That was just called XPO. Stock was up 10% today. Um, ODFL, so like some of the trucking names, transport names, Old Dominion Freight Lines. That's a big move for this stock. KNX had a nice move. So again, basically somebody was just buying in the transports today, right? If you could go through and if you could go through a group and you find that there's like 10 names that were up over 5%, just the whole group was being bought today. It wasn't one particular name, it was the whole group. Look at this name I'm not even that familiar with. ARCB. This one had earnings today, so maybe that was also possibly a catalyst for the group, but up over 11% for the day. I also think that pharma is starting to catch on. Right now, there's a couple earnings reports tomorrow, but PPH I think is going to be interesting to watch. Merck reports tomorrow. I also like what biotech did today. Right, that's a nice bull. I believe that's a bullish engulfing candle there for the uh, for the XBI ETF. And the level to watch here for follow through is going to be 127.54. Walmart had a huge day today. Right? Look at this. Look at this stock today, up 4% today. So again, to me, what's going on here? First of the month buying, where somebody's like, "Hey, I want to get into Walmart, and I'm probably going to rotate out of some other things." Right? Rotating out of maybe some who knows, uranium names or something like that. But look at the move in Walmart today. This was on our watch list. Ross Stores had a nice day today. I think Target had a nice day today. Look at Target. So once again, like there's this rotation that's going in. It's not just Walmart. Walmart probably was the standout in the group, but Costco also up 3%. Now, this is a more difficult chart. I tend to like the names that don't have to get through overhead supply like this one does, but they're buying some of these, some of the cheaper names here in the retail space. Also, if you've noticed what's been going on in telecom names, here's the IYZ ETF. This is the telecommunications ETF, but Verizon had a big report on Friday. Um, AT&T did really well. Now, there's a lot of other companies. If you go through that telecom ETF, you'll find that there's some other interesting companies in there. But this is where, for now, there is some movement going into this group. I mentioned consumer staples. Yes, this had a big day today, up 1.2%. So that outperformed all the indices that I just talked about: SPY, Qs, IWM. So there's a shift, and it could also be that we talk about things that we know, things that we don't know. We know that on average, February is a weaker month. So it could be that people are being a little bit more defensive here. Now, there's also some bright spots and more growth names. Watch this sorry, that's the wrong ETF. It does look like SMH. Here's here's SMH. Right. Notice again, it struggled right at the top of the value area. It's not, these things are not closing strong right now. So watch this level 407.43 and then also watch the 5-day moving average. Now, right now, and this stock is not even in the SMH, but right now SNDK is the leader in growth. Right. And this had a monster day today. We noticed that it was an ugly candle on Friday as a lot of growth names had reversals or just kind of struggled. This is one of them. But note, just because you have an ugly candle here, if you don't break trend, if you don't break the 5-day moving average, then you're okay. Right. You could have the ugliest looking candles, but if they don't break, you're fine. Right. So there you go. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one. So as we're going through charts here, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be, we all value and no growth. Like I think that there's going to be exceptions. I think it will be interesting to see what Palantir does. Now, notice that it went right to that VPOC and stopped for now. Right, so that's overhead supply, and that again, that's a difficult thing with some of these names. So Palantir had great numbers, but it's the question of, are they going to be able to kind of overcome? Are new buyers going to run with the ball, or are they going to say, I'm going to take advantage of this pop and I'm going to sell it? Again, even though the quarter was very good, you have a steep decline, so you've got a lot of trapped longs right now, and that's going to be the issue. So it might take a little while. You might have some sellers taking it, saying, "Hey, I got caught in this name, and I'm going to take advantage of this pop and lighten up." Now, I like what Teradyne is doing here. Look at Teradyne is up to 304. So again, this tells me that there is still some room in the semi space when you've got to move like this, because Teradyne rallied huge from the last time it beat earnings, right? This is a major star for the last quarter, right? This was when it beat the last earnings report. It went up to 147, 172, and it's all the way up to 250 from there. So this kind of belongs in that group with LRCX and Applied Materials and a couple other names like that. Very strong, and that's going to be new highs in this. Here's how our watch list did today. I spent a lot of time. I do a lot of my homework over the weekends, and I provide a watch list to TTG members. Notice how many names did very well. I had Walmart on the list today, Sienna, so optical name, and I was long an optical name coming into today. We already mentioned SanDisk, which had a huge day today. It was up 15% from the trigger that I had, up 13%. Apple, which I didn't even talk about Apple yet. So again, why do you think Apple's doing so well? Well, number one, it was just a tough day on Friday and month end, right? Whoops, go back to this chart here. Sorry about that. Why do you think Apple could outperform here? Right? Because it's cheap. It's cheap tech, right? This can be considered a value name, right? So it did go into and take out a VPOC up here. So right up here. So we'll see if it can get past that level. That's right around 270. If it can get past 270, then I think it's headed to this VPOC up here, which is 273.60. Now, if it has an inside day tomorrow, that might be your clue to say, okay, it got rejected at that just at that 5 minute VPOC, and I want to get involved if it gets closer to this top of the value area. So I think there's plenty of things to watch. I think that if you can kind of shift, if you're predominantly like been trading a lot of growth names, I think that you're going to find some other things to trade here. Looking at the momentum and looking at how things closed for a lot of value groups. I didn't talk too much about the banks today, but they also had a nice day today. There's KBE. Remember, we had this ugly looking turn, right? We made, everybody was doing high fives about the banks breaking out back in here, and then we did this. We had a reversal and came right splat right back into here. But like I said with SanDisk, right? This didn't break trend, right? It was a place to basically watch. So again, a little bit slower, but it's resolving to the high side. Last thing that I wanted to review is energy, right? So look at what happened with energy today, and this is the thing. Like, this is why I haven't been that bullish on the crude chart, because it looks very different than some of the other commodity breakouts, right? Some of the other commodity charts have broken out, right, and they came from bases and then they moved up. Crude is a completely different looking chart. It's in a downtrend, right, or it started the month in a downtrend. Now, once things start in a downtrend and try to work their way above the 200-day moving average, a lot of times there's starts and stops, and that's kind of what I think is going to happen with crude. Nat gas also, even though there's still a lot of cold weather, maybe there's a little bit of a break in the cold weather. Look at the nat gas give the whole thing back. Remember when people were uh, zooming in on 1 minute charts, right, and not giving you that context of what nat gas does? This is a very tricky commodity. Went all the way up to 7 and all the way it back down 50%. 50% move to the back to the downside in just a couple days. Very, very tricky in nat gas. And again, I don't know why they do it, but well, never mind. I'll move on from that. Let's look at real energy shares. I would watch, maybe this will be due for some consolidation and put in a bull flag in here. That's definitely possible. Shake all the hot money out of this a bit because people have gotten excited about energy, but let this cool off again. Again, if I'm going to be in a group of companies that are very associated with an underlying commodity, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on what the crude market is doing. Have a great